Okay guys, welcome to Firewatch training. Before we get started, there's a sign-in sheet. Go ahead and pass the sign-in sheet around and sign in. If there's any emergencies, we need to evacuate. We'll evacuate out this door, then out the front door, and we'll meet outside. And Pancho, you can be the roll call, and you can take attendance. Okay?
Yes, sir.
We're going to start out by doing introductions, and how we want to do it today is introduce yourself by your middle name and where you got your middle name from. So I'll start with me. My middle name is Matthew.
I don't got middle name.
Okay. My middle name is Matthew. My first name is Charles, and my middle name was given to me. I'm not sure where it came from, actually, but I go by Matt because my dad and my grandpa were both Charles, so it was easier for them to call me Matt, so that's why I go by Matt. Go by my middle name.
My name is Francisco Maximiliano. I got my middle name from my grandfather.
I ain't got a middle name, but my name is Roberto. I got mine from my mom's uncle.
My middle name is Eduardo, and I get that from my dad. And I am Eduardo Sanchez.
My middle name is Javier, and got that from my dad.
That's your dad's middle name as well?
Yeah.
So you're number 2, junior? Cool.
Middle name is Anthony, first name Travis. Got my middle name from my father and grandfather.
Are you the third then? Or you just all have the same middle name? You're the fourth? Cool. Very cool. Do you have a middle name?
No, I don't have a middle name. My name's Abraham. I got that name from my grandma.
What's your grandma's name?
Abraham.
Abrama? Cool.
My name is Andres.
Your
and
middle name?
I have no middle name.
No middle name either?
Nope. I do, but I cannot say it. But I am the third. My
Okay.
son is the fourth.
Oh yeah?
Yep.
That's cool.
I do have a middle name, but I don't want to share it.
Okay. Fair enough. Alright guys. So today we're going to be reviewing Firewatch training. When we're done with the training, I have a safety training evaluation form for you guys to fill out and also a test to take. So as we're going through the training, please speak up if you guys have a story you'd like to share, or if there's any comments or questions that you guys have. Don't be afraid to speak up, and we can talk about it. Okay? Anybody have any questions before we get started? Alright, so course objectives. Each employee will know how to prevent fire in the workplace, know how to report a fire and evacuate should one occur, and if prudent, know how to properly extinguish a fire. Has anyone in here had to put out a fire before? No? Not yet?
Not yet.
That's a good thing. It's a good thing. Alright, fire prevention embraces all measures applied to safeguarding human life and the preservation of property. This can be accomplished by proper prevention, detection and reporting, evacuation, extinguishment. The ability to recognize and remove fire hazards from the workplace will reduce the need to utilize extinguishing methods and will contribute to a safe and healthful work environment. There are 4 main goals of fire prevention. Fire prevention action taken towards preventing the ignition of a fire. Number 1, minimize the possibility of fires by controlling combustible flammable materials. How do we do that?
Picking up your work area as you're working.
Right? What else?
Cover all open sewers.
Cover all open sewers, right? How else? What kind of things do we need to pick up as we're working throughout the day?
Ignitable sources.
Ignitable sources? Like what?
Trash.
Trash? Where does trash come from?
All over. From stuff you could be opening to just bottles that should not be where they're not supposed to be.
So yeah, so packaging, right? Where we get in bunks of wood, we got to take off the wrapping, or We get boxes of material, we break down the boxes, all these kinds of things, right? Abraham, will you just occasionally check to make sure that I'm staying in the frame of view, please? Thank you. Control the ignition sources. Check fire protection equipment to ensure it will operate correctly if needed. Has everybody in here inspected a fire extinguisher before? Yep, everybody should have, and we'll be going over that later as well. Okay. Ensure employees are trained in evacuation procedures and that exits are maintained. Okay. Very, very important that employees are trained in evacuation. A lot of times, whenever an emergency happens, we rely on our training, right? If we haven't been trained, if we haven't thought about what to do in the event of emergency, then we're not going to know how to react. So it's very, very important that we're trained in our evacuation procedures. Not only when to go, but also where to go. Sometimes there might be alternate escape routes. There might be alternate assembly points. It's very important that we understand where those assembly points are and how to get there depending on which way the wind's blowing, or if it's a vapor release or a fire, all these different scenarios, right? So very, very important. Fire prevention, housekeeping, okay? Proper disposal and proper storage can eliminate ignition of flammable material. Everybody agree with that? Housekeeping is very, very important when it comes to fire prevention. Okay, probably the most important. Smoking. Smoking is an excellent ignition source and must be prohibited in areas where flammables and combustibles are stored. Okay. Here we have specific areas where people are allowed to smoke, right? Designated smoking areas. That's the only place that anybody should be allowed to smoke. If you see someone smoking in an area that isn't a designated smoking area, then you should report that. Pardon? Hot work. Work areas should be arranged so that slag and sparks from cutting, welding, grinding, and etc. do not ignite flammable materials located near the operation. Fire prevention. Fire hazard detection. If hazardous conditions arise that could produce a fire, the following measures must be taken. Take action yourself if possible by removing flammables, guarding, barricading, extinguishing, etc. Make sure that your coworkers are informed of the hazard so that they can protect themselves, and also report the hazard immediately to your supervisor. Okay? Why is it important to report to your supervisor?
To make sure that there's no damage done, or if there is, so it can get fixed.
Right, and they also have a reporting procedure as well, right? The quicker they know, the quicker they can report the information. Is the camera still rolling? Still good? See the red button on top? Perfect, thank you. So, chemistry of a fire. These are the three elements of a basic fire. There's actually a fourth one now that they teach, and that fourth one is called chain reaction. So, they actually call it tetrahedron, not necessarily a fire triangle. So, you guys might see that here and there popping up. They're kind of going away from the fire triangle into the fire tetrahedron to include chain reaction. Because honestly, you can take away the heat, the oxygen, or the fuel, or a couple of those, but there's still a chain reaction that's taking place that could produce spontaneous recombustion. Okay, so just keep that in mind. But the tried and true method is, if you remove one of these legs of a triangle, what's going to happen?
The fire will go out.
The fire's going to go out. Okay, fire needs all three of these in order to stay ignited. Okay, take away the oxygen, can't burn. Take away the fuel, nothing to burn. Right? Take away the heat. Sometimes just pouring water on a fire will cause the fire to go out because you take the heat away. Okay. Any questions on this? So sources of fuel for fires. Trash, debris, grass, trees, etc. Construction materials and packing, which we talked about earlier. Spilled fuels and chemicals. Where would we find spilled fuels and chemicals?
Gravity tanks,
Gravity tanks.
fuel oil, you know.
The fuel island from where the fuelers fill up.
Some of the tanks, like the
Sample areas.
sample areas, some of the big tanks that contain the gasoline in them.
Okay. So we would find fuels there, right? What about chemicals? Where could we find spilled chemicals?
New stations,
Lube stations,
waste pad,
waste pad, that's a big one.
and yeah, really anywhere around the refinery, I guess you say.
What about in storage areas?
Yeah.
Got chemical storage areas that we need to be concerned. If we see any kind of chemicals spilled in there, we should take note of that as well. Right. Fuel tanks, you mentioned fuel tanks. Fuel tanks all over the place, right? Definitely got to be on the lookout whenever we're around fuel tanks. Okay. Aerosol cans, that's a big one. That's why we have proper disposal areas for aerosol cans. Okay, we're not using them, we store them away properly, get them out of the work area, right? Also, if we're performing any kind of hot work, we need to establish a barricade or a hot work area and remove any combustibles that we can. If you're fire watching, it's part of your duties is to make sure that there aren't any wastes or any trash or debris or anything like that accumulating in those areas. Okay. Pipelines, compressed gases like acetylene, propane, natural gas. Where do we find those?
Analyzer buildings, a lot of the analyzer buildings contain them. Up at the Sun Center, where they store them.
What around the shop?
Huh?
What about around the shop?
Yeah, or the pipe fitter truck, welcome truck, whatever.
Yep, we could have them in the shop, right? If they're being actively used, we could have them out back in the storage area. Okay. Battery storage and charging areas. Where do we find those?
Mechanic shop,
Mechanic shop. Where else do we find arrays of batteries?
or radios, offices.
Yeah, where do we? There's a thing of a place in particular where we might come across a bank. Yep, substations. Okay. Yep, we can have come across lots of batteries in there. So if you guys are in there, I know a lot of times part of our duties are to pull out these arrays, look at them, you know, make sure that they haven't been leaked, they haven't been leaking, you know, anything like that. Okay. So a couple other sources for fuel for fires, clothing, right? That's why we wear FRCs. Okay. This stuff does burn, but it doesn't burn like your normal cottons or your other synthetics. Okay. And then of course yourself, you can also catch on fire. Your hair, primarily, first and foremost, and then everything else. Fuel storage. So good housekeeping and equipment maintenance must be followed to minimize hazards. All flammable, combustible liquids, F and Cl, must be kept in approved labeled containers. Outside storage tanks shall be no closer than 25 feet from any building. A maximum of 25 gallons of flammable and combustible liquids will be stored in a room outside of an approved cabinet. And F and Cl storage cabinets will be properly marked and have a maximum of 60 gallons of flammable or 120 gallons of combustible liquids. Small quantities of flammable liquids shall be transported, dispensed, and stored in approved metal safety cans with self-closing caps, flame arresters, and pressure relief vents. Your question?
We were just told last week by Suncourse Safety that even though our combustible spray cans are in the fire cabinet, we had to take the actual cardboard out and just place the cans in there because that acts as a fuel for if one was to ignite.
Thanks for bringing that up. So, even it. Okay, we'll sidebar that. Is that new packaging?
New packaging in the brand new box.
Okay.
They would never open.
Okay. All right, thanks for sharing. All right. Storage of F&CL liquids should be a minimum of 50 feet from hot work. Matches and cigarette lighters shall not be carried into any area where an explosive atmosphere may be present. Okay. So that means lighters, matches. If you have any of that stuff on your person, you got to take it out. You don't even want to have that stuff on you when you go into those areas. Okay. So if you're a smoker, you know, you're a welder, even, or someone that might be using a torch. If you're taking, what are they called?
Flint starter.
Yeah, your flint starter. You can't even take those into controlled areas. Okay. The use of gasoline, benzene, naphtha, or lacquer as a cleaning agent is strictly forbidden. Use funnels and spouted cans to prevent spills. Always use funnels. Okay. We got plenty of access to funnels out there. Never want to be trying to fuel any equipment without using the funnel. And then shut down equipment before refueling. Any questions on this? Very, very important that we always shut down all of our equipment, even diesel engines.
What's
Okay.
lacquer?
It's just a chemical. Just, yeah, it's just a chemical.
Oh,
A lot of times they'll use lacquer for like a paint thinner.
Usually, your weld on metal, if it's like brand new, it has like a oil film on it. You use lacquer and it takes it off, so you can penetrate to the metal.
Yeah, they use it as a cleaning agent a lot of times. Any questions on fuel storage? Questions or comments? Okay. Fuel storage for compressed gas cylinders. Signs designating contents of cylinders to be stored in each rack required, including full and empty signs. Okay, so wherever we have our cylinders to be stored, we need to be having signs posted on there that say full or empty. Okay, and a lot of people always ask, well, what if it's partial? Well, that's fine. You can have a partially full cylinder, but it's just got to be delineated from the fulls. They can be stored together, but just they got to be delineated in the same area. Okay. Sign for rack danger: no smoking or open flames. Is it still recording, Abraham?
Yeah.
Can you check, please. All right. Intermediate chains to secure any number of cylinders. Okay. And why do we want to use chains?
It's more secure than a rope.
It's more secure than a rope. And what else about a chain?
It won't disintegrate like a rose.
It won't disintegrate. Why would it disintegrate?
smell.
Weather, heat, and
Fire.
Right? So, number one, they don't deteriorate, right?
Yeah.
And also, if there's a fire, what's going to happen to a rope?
Soda?
It's going to burn. And then what do you got securing your bottles?
Nothing.
You don't have anything. Okay? Very, very important that those bottles are always secured with something that doesn't burn. Don't want to use rope. You can use 9-wire. Okay? You can use chain, anything like that. Just don't use rope. Oxygen cylinders must be separated from fuel gas or other combustibles by 20 feet or a 5-foot high firewall with a fire resistant rating of a half ounce.
What does that ratio come to? Is that like a 3/4 inch piece of plate steel?
It's usually half inch.
Half inch?
Half inch plate. Half-inch plate on your cylinders, and it's 5 foot tall. It separates your oxygen, and it's for those racks. Yep. Okay, valve protection caps must be in place when regulators and gauges are connected, except for when regulators and gauges are connected. Why is that?
In case it
Okay,
falls.
tips, yeah.
In case it tips. What else? Travis? Something could fall on it, right? They can leak. Okay, all kinds of things can happen. So anytime that we're not using those, we got to take the gauges off right away, put the protective cap on it, in case if it does tip or something does fall on it, and that's protected. Okay, very, very important. So if there are 2 more cylinders together and they're not in use, it's going to be considered storage. Okay, OSHA's a little bit vague on what is considered storage. So the best way to look at it is, well, if there's 2 of them and they're not being used, you got to consider it storage. Okay, and that'll force you to separate them, segregate them, put them between a firewall, whatever the case may be.
When empty, can you store flammable and just compressed gas together? If they're empty.
If they're empty, they should be segregated. So sources of heat and ignition, electrical, that's a big one, right? Big source of heat and ignition. Smoking in matches, friction. Okay, where do you get friction from? Where could you be working out in the field where friction could cause a source of ignition? Any jobs that we perform normally?
Just out of electricity, dragging your feet. And that's what sign is.
You could, yeah. It's possible. Any other work that we perform causes a lot of friction on top of your head. Overheated material, like a butane lighter in your pocket. Hot surfaces, open flames, spontaneous ignition, oxygen exposure to pyrophoric materials, and some metals like magnesium. Hot work such as grinding, fine cutting, and welding. Chemical reactions. So what's a chemical reaction that occurs out there in the field that can cause a fire? Something that we deal with all the time,
Reactor, catalyst.
right? The catalyst from the reactor. Okay. What about if it's brand new catalyst? What if it's not used?
No. Not that I know.
So spent catalyst,
Maybe just spent catalyst.
and what do you mix it with to get a fire?
Nitrogen. Oxygen.
Oxygen. What else? Water. Water.
That's the
Water.
reaction.
Right? So you mix a little bit of water with the catalyst and you get a chemical reaction that causes a fire, right? We had one here, right? Who was out here on that when that happened? What happened?
They left the
What plant was it? Plant one?
plant one. They left the bag inside that roll-off box with more catalyst than it should have had, and just the
What kind of a
right,
bag?
just the regular glow bag that it has.
Okay.
And it had the right. They didn't close the lid down all the way, so it had enough airflow going through it, which made the perfect storm for the fire.
And did it happen during the shift or did it happen after the shift?
After the end of the shift,
Everybody was already gone for the day and then it happened. So some chemical reactions, they're not going to happen right now in front of your face. It can take a couple hours before anything even happens. Okay? And after that happened, we actually reviewed our procedure and we updated our JHA to make sure that those lids either get closed, number one, and then also we remove it out of the unit. So that's why we don't leave any roll-offs in the unit whenever we're done for the day. Okay. Very, very important too, if it's raining a little bit, get the operators involved. Have them go out there, have them look at it and say, hey, what do we need to do here? And get input from them. Okay. All right. Static electricity sparks, someone mentioned that already. That also includes flowing flammable liquids. Those can actually create sparks as well. And lighting. And lighting is another source of heat ignition. So different types of fires. Okay. Class A fires. Want to read that, Travis? Class A.
Ordinary combustibles such as wood and paper. Water extinguishers are usually used. Water serves to reduce the temperature below its ignition point.
All right, so we talked about that earlier on the fire triangle, right? Heat was one of the legs. So just by adding water to it, it's going to cool that down and prevent it from catching back on fire. Okay, but the thing of it is, if you don't cool it down enough, okay, or if it's still hot enough in other areas, it can get hot enough again where it can, possibly reignite. We actually don't have any water fire extinguishers out here, but they are common, and they're usually, you can tell what they are by looking at them because they're kind of like in a silver type canister. So if you're ever working somewhere and you see like a silver or kind of like a brass looking, like a shiny metal fire extinguisher, not a red one, it's usually water. So just keep that in mind. And it's usually just pressurized water, so when you squeeze the nozzle, a stream of water is going to come out. Okay. And a good way to remember what a Class A fire, what burns, is anytime that Class A stuff burns, it leaves behind ash. Okay, Class A, ash. So wood, paper, things of that nature, they leave an ash. It's Class A fire. Okay, so if Class A fire leaves ash, what do you think B means for Class B fires? What do liquids do when they get really hot? Hot?
Boil.
Boil, right? Yep. So Class B fires, usually flammable liquids like oil or gas. Okay. Water is not the most effective agent to use, and smothering effect of discharged form of CO2, which cuts off the oxygen supply, is most effective. And we don't have any of those out here either, but it's important to know that they exist. And it's also very important because certain fire extinguishers, if you're using them in an area where there's not adequate ventilation and there's also personnel in the area, do you think you want to be introducing a bunch of CO2 where people are? No. So it's very important to know your firefighting equipment and what's inside of it and what's going to happen when you pull that trigger, because it might have unintended consequences, right? So Class C fires, what is electricity? voltage, amperage, C, starts with the C.
Current.
Current, okay, current. Energize electrical equipment, okay. De-energize the circuit. If there is a fire, is it still recording?
Yeah.
Good, thank you, Andres. So yeah, if there is a fire and you guys know where the source is, or you know where the breaker is, you want to get to that breaker and turn it off. That's the best way to stop that. Now, there still might be another fire that it caused, but the source will be de-energized. So very important to know where your electrical lines are being fed from. Non-conductive extinguishing agents such as carbon dioxide or dry chemical. Okay? Water must not be used. Why don't you want to use water on an electrical fire?
It just makes it worse, doesn't it?
Makes it worse. Conducts electricity, right?
Yeah.
So if you have, you know, an open electrical circuit over there, and there's a fire, you dump a bunch of water on it. Now you're standing in water. Is that puddle not energized as well? And you
Yeah.
give electric shock, right? It's very important never to use water on electrical fires. Same thing at your house. There's another one that's not listed after D, and that's K. And K stands for kitchen. And basically, the kitchen fire extinguisher is really good for extinguishing fats from animals, like vegetable oils and things of that nature. So there's a class K. And then class D is combustible metals such as magnesium, titanium, or sodium. And they require special extinguishing agents like special dry powders. Okay. Anybody have any questions on classifications of fires? Pretty simple stuff, right? Alright, so fire extinguishers. Cooling or quenching. It involves the absorption of heat while cooling the fuel to a point where it no longer releases flammable vapors. Water is most often used. Okay. Removal of fuel. This is a big one. Guys, if you can just remove the fuel from the area, do so. Okay, if you can do it without putting yourself in harm's way, by all means do so. It involves elimination of the source of the fuel, such as closing the fuel valve on natural gas fire or transferring unburned fuel into another tank, etc. Okay. Good example of removal of fuel is if you have a cylinder that catches fire. Okay, all you have to do is calmly walk over to the cylinder, close the cap. Okay, if you're using an oxyacetylene cutter and your rig, your handle catches on fire, okay, fire extinguisher is not going to do anything to put that out because it's under pressure and it'll probably, you know, stay on fire. Just walk over, turn the gauge off. Okay. Remove the oxygen by smothering or blanketing. Removal of oxygen from fires, such as placing the lid on a grease fire and pan. It's very effective. And some fires cannot be extinguished by smothering. For example, some plastics, such as cellulose, and some metals, such as titanium, generate their own oxygen when they burn. In these cases, other extinguishing methods must be used. So different markings of fire extinguishers. Class A, now all fire extinguishers will have one or the other of these on there, okay? It'll either say Class A or it'll show a little trash can on fire. Class B, it'll just have a B, or it'll have a jerry can, like a fuel can, showing it's on fire. And Class C, it'll just be a C, or it'll have the little plug there, and then Class D with the star. So fire extinguishers, extinguishers suitable for more than one class of fire should be identified by multiples of the symbols previously described. So out here, if you looked at one of the fire extinguishers that we have, what is it going to have on it? Is it going to have an A on it, you think?
Should I go 3, no? Or 4?
These usually take a special type of agent. You won't normally find it in one of these. So you guys think it'll have an A?
Yeah.
So you think there's a fire out there, if a fire happens, we got to be prepared to put out a fire with ordinary combustibles, right? Okay, so I think it'll have an A. What about a B? You think there's any liquids that we might come across that can catch fire?
Yes.
So do you think our fire extinguishers should also be Bs?
Yep.
Okay. And what about Cs?
Yeah.
Is there potential for an electrical fire to happen? So you think they should be Cs? So what do you guys think the fire extinguisher that we have, what markings should it have on it?
ABC.
ABC. So this one, it actually has the pictures on there, so you guys can see. Has the trash can fire, the jerry can, and the electrical current, okay? ABC. So extinguisher types: pressurized water, carbon dioxide, dry powder, and also dry chem, and your stored pressure cartridge operated. We do have some of those on site as well. They're usually part of the plants or the units. So how do we inspect fire extinguishers? Verify that the yearly seal zip tie is intact. Make sure the safety pin is not bent and it's in good shape. Okay, this little keeper pin. Make sure that the handle is not bent or damaged. Very important. The hose must be tight and at the connection point. So a good way to check those guys is just grab the hose, take it out from this, and just twist it. Okay, you can do that. Also look in the bottom to make sure that dirt dauber or wasp or something hasn't built a nest in there. Okay, make sure they're tight. There should be no obstructions inside the nozzle. There should be no dents or deep scratches on the body. Okay, a little bit of a surface rust or something might be okay, but any big dents or any deep penetrations, you need to take the fire extinguisher out of service. Okay. Check the bottom for rusted areas. Okay, that's where they're welded. So if you see rust there, that could be potentially a big problem. I've heard of a couple different scenarios where someone's gone to use a fire extinguisher, and when they pulled the trigger, the pressure shot the fire extinguisher up, and struck them underneath the chin and killed them as a result. So basic overall condition. And the labels should also all be intact and be legible. Okay. Inspection points for cartridge operated fire extinguishers: verify that the yearly seal is intact. Make sure the cartridge cover is in place and in good shape. Make sure the handle is not bent or damaged. The red pin on the top of the cap should be down, not up. Make sure the cap is tight on the body. The hose must be tight at the connection point. There should be no obstructions inside the nozzle. Make sure that the nozzle handle functions properly. There should be no severe dents on the body. And then check the bottom for rusted areas. A little surface rust is okay, but you don't want any deep areas of penetration. Okay? And whenever we use a fire extinguisher, remember the acronym PASS. You guys remember what that stands for? What's it stand for?
Pull pin, aim,
sweep.
Squeeze? Squeeze and sweep, right? Yep, you got it. Okay, very, very important. And believe it or not, just remembering PASS, you know, when do you think you guys are most likely to use a fire extinguisher away from work? Is there a certain time of year?
grilling,
4th of July.
Right, what else?
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving?
Christmas,
Why
camping,
Thanksgiving?
All the cooking and oven.
All the cooking in the oven,
with
deep frying, turkey,
Yep, and
right? Summertime on the grills, right? Camping, okay? Those guys that just started that fire out in Boulder, that's what happened to those guys. They didn't put out their fire all the way, right? Am I still recording?
Christmas.
Still good? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Christmas, right? What about Christmas?
Christmas tree, the lights.
Christmas tree, the lights, right? And then plus all the presents and all the wrapping and all that
The
kind of
cooking
stuff.
as well.
the grilling, all the pumpkin cakes and stuff.
Pumpkin cakes.
I'm sorry.
The tamales.
Tamales, I mean.
Yep. So just, you know, this is something that's really easy to teach your kids and your wife as well. Pass, pull, aim, squeeze, sweep. We've been in this industry for a long time, so it's built in our head. We know what that is. Okay. And if you can, try and teach your family that, because if something happens, you're going to rely on their training. Okay. So yeah, pull the pin. This will allow you to discharge the extinguisher. So basically, on the fire extinguisher, this pin right here, this is the only thing that's preventing the fire extinguisher from going off whenever you squeeze the handle. Okay. If you guys haven't looked at it before, whenever you get a chance, just look inside there and you can see that that pin is just preventing that handle from pushing that pin down. Okay. You have to pull that pin out. Now remember, another thing is, these are tamper seals or breakaway tags, and they're designed to break only under a couple pounds of pressure. Okay, so pretty much, you know, a kid could pull this pin off. It doesn't take a lot of pressure. One thing you want to remember is, if you're missing this tamper seal, don't reinstall this pin and try and keep it in place with anything other than one of these tamper seals. And if you put a zip tie on it or tie wire, what's going to happen when you need it? You're not going to be able to get the pin out. Okay, and during a fire, you know, a couple seconds can mean the difference between life and death. So please make sure that this is on there and it stays intact. Okay. Aim at the base of the fire. Okay, stand about 8 feet away from the base of the fire. If you aim at the flames, which is frequently the temptation, the extinguishing agent will fly right through and does no good. You want to hit the fuel. And around Christmas time, watch the news because they do a pretty good job. They'll go out and they'll have little pans that they'll set up, and they'll get passers-by. They'll say, hey, can you guys mind, trying out this experiment with us? And they'll start it on fire. And they'll ask the person to put it out, and 9 times out of 10, the person doesn't know how to put it out because they're shooting it at the flames. Remember to aim at the base. You got to aim at the base of the fire. Squeeze. Squeeze the top handle or lever. This depresses a button that releases the pressurized extinguishing agent in the extinguisher. Sweep from side to side. Okay. Another common mistake that people make is if you're right-handed, like I am, it's your dominant hand, you want to pick up the fire extinguisher with your right hand. Your left hand, where's all your coordination? If you're right-handed, where's your coordination?
In your right hand.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I'm right-handed and my coordination's in my right hand. So a lot of times people want to pick it up, they're going to grab this. What do you think it's going to look like when they're trying to put the fire extinguisher? They're probably going to be going like that, right? So again, pick it up with your left hand, squeeze it with your left hand, and use your right hand to bat the flames down, okay? Think about that. Sweep from side to side until the fire is completely out. Start using the extinguisher from a safe distance away, then move forward. Once the fire is out, keep an eye on the area in case it reignites. Okay, very, very important. Fire extinguisher location, hot work operations immediately available to crew performing hot work within 25 to 75 feet of dispensing or storage area of F&CLs. One fire extinguisher for each 3,000 square feet of building area on each floor with a travel distance of 100 feet. Between 25 and 75 feet from flammable gas cylinder storage, and on each portable welding machine. Limitations, okay, they must be accessible and properly located. Extinguishers are generally effective only in the beginning stage. Extinguisher effectiveness is only good as employee training, and fire alarms must be sounded immediately upon discovery of a fire. Keep in mind, guys, in order to be fire watch, we do have to do annual training, hands-on training with fire extinguishers. We'll go out to the fire field to start a fire. You guys can go out there and actually, you'll be required to put a fire out. Okay. Inspection, as you walk around the facility, check the fire extinguisher on a regular basis. And check, routinely inspect as part of your safety program. The service date, make sure it's current. Make sure that we have unobstructed access. Okay, very, very important. Make sure you have the proper type, size, location, and markings. And make sure that people are trained in how to properly use it. If a fire starts in your area, report it immediately and start the evacuation. Use portable firefighting equipment and assign people to direct professional firefighters and their equipment to the fire location. All right. Some of these things you can do simultaneously. You don't have to report the fire and then start evacuation. A lot of times you can do it at the same time. Get a hold of operations while you're calling, tell them there's a fire, while you're also going to get a fire extinguisher to attempt to put the fire out if it's in the beginning stage. Okay. But it's very, very important that it gets reported immediately, okay, while these other things happen. You as an employee should become familiar with the following in order to act effectively should a fire occur. Know the facility procedures, fire alarm locations, and portable fire extinguishing equipment. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Questions or comments? All right, I have a safety training evaluation I'll have everybody fill out, and also a test. If you guys don't have any questions, thank you very much.